Hi, I'm Jodi, Brandon Richards' mum. He was a happy, healthy 16-year-old, the life and soul of all his friends. About a week before Christmas 2020, he started experiencing back pain. We had a telephone appointment with the doctor, diagnosed pull muscle. He continued, didn't get any better, got worse. So I took him to our A&E on Christmas Eve morning. He was physically examined where he was told again it's pull muscle and to get ibuprofen, and within a week it should have eased. We did as I said, and 3 days later, we was back at the hospital. He had retention and he was having trouble walking. We got transferred to another hospital where an MRI was done, which showed a large mass of about 8 centimetres in the T3 section at the top of his spine. He went down for emergency surgery then, 9-hour operation to remove the tumour and decompress his spine. He learnt to walk within a week, had his catheter removed, was walking with a frame. We got discharged on January the 12th. We were supposed to be at home for 6 weeks while his spine healed from surgery before starting chemotherapy. We was only at home a day and a half before he collapsed and was paralysed again. The hospital was sure it must be a complication from surgery. We got taken back. A second MRI showed that the tumour was back, but it was now 16 centimetres. In just over 2 weeks, it had been removed and grew back to over double in size. We had that removed a second time. That was when I learned his prognosis was terminal and they didn't know how long he'd have left. And we was put straight onto palliative care. So we had palliative radiotherapy, 35 sessions. Halfway through that, we found out it had metted to his lungs. And then we got discharged after his radiotherapy, for a couple of weeks at home before starting chemotherapy. My son was put on the strongest chemo there is, doxorubicin and cisplatin, and he had 4 out of 6 cycles of that before later getting sick with sepsis. So he was diagnosed with sepsis. It took him 2 days to get the diagnosis. Once they found out, they did remove his PICC line because it came from there. He was put on IV antibiotics. His infection markers was 400 and something. And they told me once we get him better from the sepsis and his infection markers continue lowering, it's time to take him home to pass. So that's what we did. We was at home probably about a week and a half, 10 days in fact, and then we got took back in because even though my son was unaware he was dying, I fought as well. My son's so academically clever, a lot brighter than me. If he wanted to know something, he'd ask. He's asked so much along this. He never asked the question, am I going to die? So that tells me he didn't want to know. But I had to fight oncology team for 8 months not to tell him. My argument was, if he asks, tell him. If he doesn't, do you know what I mean? No. So yeah, we went home, we spent 10 days at home. He started eating 3 meals a day, back to sleeping, proper resting, everything was back to our routine. So I found my son's oncologist. We'd had an appointment pre-booked anyway, and she was like, we didn't expect this, so we're going to send you out the new paperwork for another lot of chemo to try. But when the paperwork came, that was the day we was being taken in hospital for our final time. When we got to the hospital, they did a chest X-ray, and my son's lungs was just filled with boulders of cancer. And now the last time we saw it was only a couple of specks, and it had covered his lungs. So that final week was Brandon saying goodbye to his closest.